is freezing. And I reconsidered recording this. I was like, I can just record it tonight. And then maybe tomorrow morning I'll post it with like a little sorry note. But then I realized I almost procrastinated. But, we all know, guys. We all know. Let's just say it. Procrastination is not real. I know you might say, no, but it does. It's not. So, welcome to today's episode 2 of Not Only in Pink. It's me, Jessica. I am riding solo today as I am not with Danielsi. Danielsi will be doing it next week. We decided to do it in this form. So basically, we do one episode together, then it's me, then it's her separately. So today will be only me. Next week will be only her. Then the other week after her will be both of us again, if you get what I mean. So today it's going to be me, your first host, Jessica. So if you do not know us, we are now on episode 2. And our first topic was comparison is the thief of girlhood. What is Not Only in Pink in a very short summary? If you do want to know more about it, you can maybe go back to episode 1. We are available on YouTube, Substack, and Spotify. So do your pick. And you will get a more formal intro to what Not Only in Pink is. But I'll give you a small summary. Not Only in Pink is basically supposed to be a podcast, an article, blog as well. Kind of, yeah. It's supposed to be about helping other young women. Like, it's not like we know better than you. It's not like I know. It's not like Danielle knows. Neither of us are experts. We're not doctors. We're not therapists. We're not anything professional. But I feel like there are many subjects that aren't spoken enough about, so we're going to be diving into topics that aren't really spoken about too often. So that's a summary of what Not Only Pink is, but if you really want to get a more in-depth from both of us, it was in episode 1, so you can go check that out. Today's topic is, girl, procrastination is not real. So today we're going to be talking about procrastination. What is procrastination? How do we get procrastinated? And why do we even get procrastinated to start with? So, if it is not procrastination, then what is? I'm sure all of us at some point have been procrastinating something, even this week, maybe even today. I'm looking at you. And what is procrastination? So, according to dictionary, this is dictionary, procrastination means the act of delay or postponing tasks, often voluntarily, despite knowing there will be negative consequences. I'm sure you know what this is. Everybody has done it. Everyone has suffered from procrastination. It involves putting off unpleasant or high priority tasks like chores, work, studying, in favor of more enjoyable or irrelevant activities. Funny enough, one of the examples I saw here is waiting until a last minute to start a project and then deciding to clean your entire house to avoid studying. I am personally like that. Sometimes I just get the drive to clean my whole room and the house. However, I do know that I have like 2 pending things that I have to do, but I'm cleaning the house like a madman. And that is actually a moment that it's now self-realization. That was procrastination. Wow. I never thought of that. So, that's what procrastination is. I'm sure all of us have gone through it. All of us know what it is. All of us have done some type of procrastination, no matter how efficient you think you are. Everybody has done some sort of procrastination. Characteristics about procrastination. It is often irrational. Hear the word, irrational. You plan to do a task, but delay it anyway, often until the last. I did that a lot with my schoolwork, and it was a terrible, terrible, terrible method. I actually once even got a 0% math assessment simply because I had, I think, 5 weeks to complete it. But I was like, no, I can do it next week. The due date isn't now. I'll do it later. Math doesn't take that long, so I'll do it later. Until it was the literal day of the due date, and I had like 5 assessments that I had delayed and I had not done. So I had to do those 5 assessments, and most of them were time consuming. I think I also had art, so art took very long. Then I was like, okay, I'm finally done with art. Let me quickly do math, only to find out I had like 10 minutes, 10 minutes to the due time because after that would be cut off. And I was like rushing. I was trying to write. I was trying to take my notes. I was trying to even go on ChatGPT to explain this equation. I was getting like I was rushing. And then I remember looking at the time and it was like 3 minutes too. And then I started calling my mom. I was like, Mom, help me, I don't know what to do. I don't actually know what I planned to do if my mom would have come because it's not like she could do anything. At most, all she did was, what is going on? I thought she said that your assessments were okay, that you didn't need to do anything much today since it's the due day. And now I just sat there. I remember the time passed, and I didn't even finish the beginning of question 1 because I thought it would be easier, and I thought, oh, I can do it last. It's not going to take that long. Until the literal time of the due came, and it was blocked off from submission. And now I was just staring at the screen, and I was like, why? I'm sure you also get that sense when you look when you see something that was supposed to be done and now you have to do it now, and then maybe like the due date passes, or for example, you were supposed to do a favor for a friend or something, and at some point they're like, oh, you know what, it's fine, and now you're like, why didn't I do it? Like that's what came to me. I'm like, why didn't I do it now? I literally have 0% on that assessment, and I had to rely on my exams because it was supposed to be one assessment and one exam. So now I had to rely fully on my exam paper when I had the chance to boost my marks with the assessment. So that is my one experience. I have another one that we will get to, but let's get to the point. My topic is procrastination isn't real. Something that I can say people don't explicitly say it, but by the way the topic is treated, it's almost as if people constantly say that procrastination isn't real. Like, I don't think if you go to someone older or your parents, I don't think they'll really understand. Like if you tell them, oh, I'm procrastinating. Your parents are just gonna say something like, oh, you're lazy, or somebody older, or sometimes even your friends. I'm sure even our generation doesn't really understand it either. So it ends up becoming indirectly saying that procrastination isn't real. That's what many people say indirectly. By the actions, by the way the topic is treated, by the way we don't know much about it to start with, means that many people just assume, oh, it's not a big issue. Unfortunately, it is, because as I said, there's so many moments. Like for me, example was the one of business. It's something I think we all kind of did. Maybe you were able to submit it. Lucky you. Blessed were you, because I didn't. And at the end, you just feel bad about it. And then, for example, in my case, my mom was like, why didn't you do it? I thought you said your assessments were fine. And now on top of that, I know I have a 0. And now my mom's like, why didn't you do it? I told you to do it. And also, I knew I was supposed to do it. So it just ends up becoming very sad. I don't know how to explain it. Ends up becoming disappointed, I could say. So, procrastination isn't real. You're not putting things off. No, you're not putting things off. You're not wasting time, right? You're definitely not avoiding anything important. You're just waiting. I think that's also another thing about procrastination. You like waiting. If you're wondering what I'm reading, by the way, it is the Substack article that I posted on Substack. The link is in the bio. If you're on YouTube, it's in our bio. If you are on Spotify, then it should be also in the bio. But I'm on the Substack article that I posted on Tuesday, so if you want to read it, that's what I'm following along with. So, when it comes to procrastination, many people aren't really putting things off. You kind of give the excuse that you're waiting. You're waiting. You're waiting for the right time to do it. For example, you're waiting for the right mood, you're waiting for the right energy, the right version of yourself to show up and suddenly do everything perfectly. Because you're like, I'm not doing my project now. I don't think I studied enough for this project. Let me just do it next week. I'll understand better by next week. I'm just going to wait for me to know more about the subject. Waiting. Procrastination is slightly also waiting. When you decide that I'm not ready right now, I'll just wait it out. Because obviously, that's how life works. I'm being sarcastic because that's not how life works. Life works with what you have to do now. You tell yourself, I'll start tomorrow. As I said, I just need to feel more motivated. I work better under pressure. That is also something I still have to work on. I also like saying that, no, I'll hold it off because, I work better under pressure. Which is true. Because when I need to study, I think when I have too much freedom, I feel like, I don't need to take this topic seriously. However, if I know the exam is in one day, I will suddenly be so locked in. I will be like, the subject is so important. However, when I have it like in 3 days, I'll be like, no, I have time to do this. So I always say that, I work better under pressure. I don't need to do anything right now. I work better under pressure. I'll just do it later. And it almost sounds logical at the time, even comforting, because now, if, for example, I had to submit a work project in a week, I can then say, no, I'm not going to do it today. I'm going to do it 2 days before, maybe. Well, great. Now I can sit down and watch Netflix, because I'll do it in 2 days before the due date. So now you're comforting yourself from the fact that, I don't need to do it now. And it also goes back to being in your comfort zone. That's one reason. Being in your comfort zone. Procrastination is your comfort zone. It's basically satisfying your comfort zone. It's basically a word to describe that. Because you would be uncomfortable if you had to do the work project now because, you don't feel like it. Like me, it's cold. It is really cold now. Even my nose is starting to feel a bit sick. But I was like, no, I'm going to do it. Because this would be outside my comfort zone. I could be in my bed wearing my pajamas that are nice and warm. But here I am. I changed. I did my hair and I had to sit down, put the camera up, had to set everything up for me to record this. And that's out of my current comfort zone. My comfort zone right now would be to be in bed, as I said, with my pajamas on, maybe watching a show. Um, that would be what I would want to do right now, but here I am. It's putting yourself there, outside your comfort zone. Because if procrastination isn't real, then nothing's actually wrong with it. Am I right? Do you get what I mean? So, for me, this is my second example. This example is the one I put in the article that I posted. The first example, I actually even forgot. I only remember now that I'm recording. But this is the example that I have in the article. So, my second example. Procrastination is a word I only started using appropriately about a year ago. I didn't understand what it meant. I'll be honest, I did not know what procrastination meant. I used to use it really wrong. I forgot how exactly I used it wrong, but I remember I used it wrong. That somebody had to correct me. That they were like, "I think you're using that word wrong. I don't think it's what you think it is." I forgot how I used it, but it was wrong. I didn't use it correctly. Um, Simply because no one would ever explicitly explain what was procrastination. I'll just hear the word. I think it was like, what, 2021 to 2022? That was when I do truly know it. And that was kind of the time that the word was coming out a lot. Like there was a lot of things online. Oh, POV procrastination. You know, those type of videos. So it was a word that was coming out a lot. So I think I didn't really understand it because no one really explained. It was just like POV procrastination hits. And you're like, okay, what is procrastination that hit you? So at the time, I didn't really understand what it meant because no one was actually ever sitting down and saying, oh, this is procrastination, it's any delay. And I'll be honest, I think I don't remember too much, but I think at the time I'm sure I was procrastinating with something. So I knew the word, but I didn't know what it meant because no one actually ever explains what is procrastination. It's not something that we really learn at school. It's not anything that we learn anywhere. Actually, also I feel like our parents don't really explain either. It's not really a word that they're 100% familiar with, or that they use commonly or often. So I think that they also don't know. So it ends up in no one knowing. So I feel like I wish there was more explanation on what is procrastination because I feel like once you know, you're able to identify it. Because when you do not know what it means, you just feel like it's laziness, which goes to my article. I have to admit that procrastination is an underrated topic, as I have said. I don't think anyone talks about it enough. You never want to procrastinate, you just do. It's not laziness, it's just a sudden lack of drive. This is the example. Now we're going to example number 2. A few months ago, I texted my friend Denilzy, so our other host, at midnight and said, let's start a podcast. By the way, it's what you're listening to. This is basically the origin story of not only in Pink, but it is also an example of procrastination. And I told her, let's start a podcast. Her reply was, about what? Quite literally, that's what she replied. About what? At first, I was unsure. We then brewed different ideas, then sparked. It was a eureka moment. A podcast about helping modern women with actual modern solutions. Then came rigorous planning, talking and throwing around name ideas here and there. I soon thought of 21st century growth. But no, it was too reoccurring. Not everyone names things 21st century something. But no, it was too current. I wanted something that spoke to women of the future. In a sense, then came the idea 22nd century growth. And it stuck. because we're not in the 22nd century, we're currently in the 21st century. So 22nd would basically be 21,000, if you get what I mean. But we're not going to get there for sure. I don't think any of us who listen to this will live that long. But I wanted something that spoke to people of the future. Towards the end of December of last year, we were planning to launch as early as the first week of January. Our excitement was high, rigorous planning continued, designing, scheduling. Then came the first week. Happy New Year! That was the first week of January. We posted our very first article, but somehow we couldn't record our first podcast. Reasonable at first, so we rescheduled, but then we were scheduled, and then we were scheduled again. So we eventually found ourselves in the middle of March, no podcast, only a few articles, not even consistently every week, just a few articles here and there. At the time, I genuinely questioned myself. Like, this is quite, not far long ago. It was now in March. I questioned myself. Was it that I was not interested in the podcast anymore? Was I not committed because, I don't like it anymore? Am I not interested in helping people anymore? But no, I realized that I still did want to help other young women. But somehow, it was really hard to stay consistent. Now comes the question, why? Why is there procrastination? Why do we like waiting? Why and why? Just why? Then why? Really, why is it hard to stay consistent? That is the biggest question that many people have when it comes to procrastination. Why is it so hard to stay consistently doing something at the time you need to do? So why? Here is where it's going to get a little uncomfortable for all of us, including myself. If procrastination isn't real, brackets, then why does it always show up right when the things we need to do matter most? For example, as I said, I also wrote in the article, the assignment that could change everything. At least that assignment wasn't like a final exam. It was, I think, just the first semester of the year. So it wasn't that important, but I do know some people have assessments that matter a lot, that count towards basically their life and death of passing that year. So why does procrastination only come when there's that thing that you actually need to do that could change your life? Or maybe what you're delaying could even be a habit that you said you'd build. The version of yourself you said you were becoming. Strange how it never shows up for scrolling, for distractions, or for things that don't require work. It's quite true. There's not a time, I don't think that ever happens. You will never be like, I'm procrastinating scrolling on Instagram. There is not a time that you ever say I'm procrastinating to scroll on Pinterest. You just end up scrolling there. Why? You don't actually really know. You're just like, it's something to pass time. I understand sometimes you do have time, or sometimes I have nothing else to do really. And I'm like, okay, let me just go on Pinterest, some ideas. But it's funny how procrastination never comes for things like that. For binge watching your favorite show, procrastination never comes for that. You're never going to be like, I didn't watch my favorite series this week. I'm delayed. No, you actually end up watching it when you are not even supposed to watch it because you actually have something important. Maybe it's not procrastination. Maybe it's hesitation. That is my point that I decided to write mostly about in my article and this podcast. Maybe it's hesitation. What if it's not really procrastination? What if procrastination is more hesitation? Maybe it's the fear of doing something imperfectly. Fear of not being as good as you imagined, fear of starting and realizing it's harder than you thought. As I said, I delayed my math assessment because I knew it would take time. Looking back at it, I know that I was saying, no, it'll be short, but I knew I was doing it simply because it will take a lot of my time. It will take a lot of effort. And what if I get it wrong? What if I get this question wrong? What if I get a mark that I wish I had more on? So I was like, I'm do it later when I feel more confident. But that's slightly hesitating. Because I'm like, no, if I do it, maybe something will happen. I won't do it perfectly. Instead, you decide to wait. Not because you're lazy, but because starting feels like a risk. As I said, I didn't want to do it because what if I do it and I don't get good marks on it? So I hesitated because there's the risk. I didn't hesitate because of the time, mostly just because of the risk and the comfort of being able to do whatever I wanted at the moment. You don't need motivation to start. Here's the truth. When it comes to procrastination, there's one quiet truth that no one speaks about. You do not need motivation to start. You need severe honesty. Many people usually have the thing of, I want to do something, let me scroll and find some motivation. It's not going to help you. You do not need motivation. You do not need motivational quotes. You do not need a TED Talk on what you want to do. When you're searching for motivation, it means that you're already hesitating. You're already spending time trying to get motivation to do something rather than actually doing the thing. That is actually already avoiding. So don't look for motivation. You do not need it. You do not need motivation, especially external motivation. You can literally have motivation from yourself, internal motivation. You do not need to search on Pinterest for motivational quotes for you to do your homework. No, you should never look for motivation. Be honest about what you do. As I said, you do not need motivation. Instead, you need severe honesty. Honesty is what you're going to go after. Because when you know and you're being honest about what you're going after, then you know that that is my goal. You will then have to be honest about what are you avoiding about your goal. What are you avoiding in that goal? You have to be honest about that. You also need honesty about what you actually want. You can have a goal. For example, I don't want to be a lawyer, but for example, you want to be a lawyer. That can be your goal, but what do you actually want? You become a lawyer and then what? What do you actually want? Do you want to be happy in the career you want? That is being honest. Then you know that I'm not really there. Of course, you love law, for example. You love law, but what you truly want in law is because you want to serve justice. You want to help people reach the justice that they deserve. That is then what you truly want. You don't want to be a lawyer. You want to be able to be in position to help others through the law. So you have to be honest about what is your goal. Honesty about the fact that the perfect time is not coming. The perfect time is not coming. Believe me, it is not coming. It's not coming. Don't ever wait for, it's not time. Maybe you have a business idea, but you're just hesitating. You're like, no, but what if my business doesn't go forward? What if it doesn't work? What if no one buys what I want to sell? What if no one's interested in what I want to do? Don't wait for, the perfect time. There will never be the perfect time. You're gonna, at some point, end up old already. Of course you can start a business when you're old, but then it's a lot harder. Now you have things to deal with, more things to deal with. You have a lot of family. You have to talk to people more definitely. You have more responsibilities. However, when you're younger, you have the energy, you have the drive, you have the opportunities, you have the interest from business partners for your business. So now you've just laid off on an opportunity just because, oh, it wasn't time to be an entrepreneur. I'll do it later. Next thing, you're going to be in your 40s, wondering what happened to your dream of opening this wonderful business. And now when you look back at it, you're thinking, imagine if I was strong enough, if I decided to have the drive to do it at that time, I would have been successful now. But now I have to work 3 jobs to sustain myself. So never wait for the perfect time. Be honest with yourself that there will not be the perfect time. They will not. Unless, of course, it's something that you do need to wait for. That is something else. But when it comes to a goal, don't ever say, I'm going to do it later, as I said with my assessment. No, I'm going to do it later when I feel right. No. I was supposed to do it then. And to be honest with myself, that there was no better time to do my assessment. It's now. So maybe procrastination is real. But certainly avoidance, fear, and overthinking are real. Avoidance, fear, and overthinking. Those are 3 things that are basically encased in the word procrastination. Because when you procrastinate, you avoid, you fear, and you overthink about something. The only way out of it is to start before you feel ready. Because becoming who you said you'd be was never going to feel comfortable. It was always going to require movement. And for me, yes, I did fall back, but here I am, working on being consistent, 1 article down, and still have to record the Thursday's podcast, which I'm doing today. And the episode will be coming out tomorrow morning. But I certainly will. So that was it for me on the article. And I would just love to leave you guys with a little verse. It's already quite long. I'm so sorry. But I'm going to leave you with a verse. This is my Bible. And we're going to be going to one of my favorite verses, actually. It's in Ecclesiastes 1:4. 11:4, sorry. Ecclesiastes 11:4. So it's quite an interesting verse that I actually really think it relates perfectly to today's topic of procrastination. So it's in Ecclesiastes 11:4. I said, "He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap." What does it mean if you're lost? This goes back to farming at the time, because, as you know, the Bible usually has examples regarding the time of, the olden days. So people used to farm. Okay, they still farm, but in farming, you have to wait for the season of whatever you need to do. For example, when strawberry season is out, it means basically the time that strawberry season is not on means that they're growing strawberries in that time. Then in strawberry season, they will reap what they sowed in non-strawberry season, if you get that. So farmers would have to kind of observe the weather to see when was best to sow, when was best to put in the seeds, when was best to, dig the ground. They had to look at the weather. And basically what this verse is saying, he who observes the wind will not sow. So this is basically somebody that is just hyper fixated on waiting for the perfect day. So he's saying, oh no, I'm going to observe the wind. He's going to regard the clouds maybe I should wait until after it rains to sow everything. or maybe I should wait after for me to read everything. That is basically procrastination in the Bible, not explicitly, but they're basically talking about that. Ecclesiastics is talking about that. A person who is hyperfixated, they're overthinking, they observe the wind, they will not sow. Because now at some point you're gonna be like, oh I'm away, maybe next week we'll have better wind. Now it'll turn into a month of you could have sold 3 weeks ago, but no, I was waiting for the wind. Now you're gonna be 1 month late in the sense of being a farmer. That means you'll only be able to sell 1 month later than all the other farmers. When you overthink about the wind, when you look at the clouds and you're like, oh, maybe it's going to rain, when you think about that risk, it's overthinking, it's avoiding. Because, it's a bit windy today. I won't throw the seeds, now. So I'm going to leave you with that, Ecclesiastes 11:4, if you want to check it out. You can also check on your phone, on Google, on YouVersion, on your Bible if you have one. And that is it for me, Jessica. And I hope to see you next week. I'll be watching Victoria / Danielsi. I'll see her podcast because next week will be her turn. She'll have her own topic. I'm not sure what it will be. It's a surprise for me too. So next week will be Danielsi. Hope you can also go. Make sure to tune in for next week, Thursday. And if you already don't know about our Substack for our articles, what I was reading throughout this episode, then you can go onto our Substack. As I said in the beginning of the episode, link in the bio. Our articles are posted every Tuesday, and the podcasts are posted every Thursday. And on Fridays, we post it on YouTube. So you can go check it out. Not only in pink, that's it for me, Jessica Marinella. Bye! Oh my gosh, I was like high-pitched. Bye! Bye! Remember to like, subscribe, share with a friend. You don't want to gatekeep. Don't gatekeep. Be nice. Don't gatekeep. Don't gatekeep. I'm not gatekeeping. Don't gatekeep. So share, like, subscribe. Listen again. If you haven't already watched episode 1, go check it out before you're on episode 6 and you procrastinated. So watch yourself. I hope you do have a wonderful week until next week. And I will also be excited for next week's topic. Bye.